Welcome to my channel. My name's Jared. This is another Sunday update video. I also post silent build videos on Wednesdays, so be sure to check those out as well. Today, we're going to talk about the Model T. Now, I wasn't able to get a build video out this last Wednesday because I've been working on the rear axle, and I didn't have all the parts I needed to get it back together and get it back in the car. So that video will be coming out next Wednesday. But I'll give you an update now so you can kind of see where I'm at with that project. So this is the drive shaft. These are the two sides of the rear axle. And then this is the rear axle and the differential. So when I took it apart, there was some good news and some bad news. The main thing you're looking for are these thrust washers. The original material that they used back in the 20s would have deteriorated by now, and they just start disintegrating and they can cause a lot of damage in the rear end. So you want to put in these, I think this is like a brass or something, these metal type thrust washers. So the good news is somebody has already done that. So you can see here, these have already been replaced. So that's good. The rear end has been serviced in the past. There also doesn't seem to be any play in between the axles because there's a bushing that goes in there as well. And I don't have it here, but I did get that one too in case I need it. There's a small bushing inside. And again, if that wasn't replaced, then that material that was used kind of disintegrates, and so you need to use this metal type bushing. So I believe that's been replaced, but I'm going to open this up and check it, and I have a new one if I need to replace it. But overall, that's all good news. So the bad news is there were a few things that do still need to be replaced. This bearing needs to be replaced. You can see here these pieces have come off of it. And these are the original style bearings that came in the car. And these are much better than the aftermarket bearings. So this is an aftermarket bearing. You can kind of see even through the plastic that there are no grooves in the bearings like the originals. These original bearings are actually a bent piece of metal apparently. Those aren't grooves cut into it, but those grooves help to move the grease and keep the bearing greased as it functions. So these are a better style, but they don't make them anymore because they're very difficult to make and costly, so they make this style. So what's recommended is if you have original bearings to use your best two bearings on the outer bearings of the axles, and then you can use these new replacement bearings on the inside, because the inside doesn't actually have much weight on it. All the weight is on the outside of the axle. These are just kind of coasting. So that's the plan. I still have to get the bearings out of the end, these two end bearings, and then out of those four, whichever two are the best, I'll use them in those ends, and then I'll replace these with the aftermarket style bearing. And then there was also one of these metal plates here. I think it's this one was cracked. So I have one new metal plate. And then when I put all this back together, you have to get the clearance correct. And so the way to do that, the thing will be upright, and I'll put it together and bolt the two housings together, and then I'll check for the amount of friction when I spin it, and I have to get that just right, and then I take it all apart and put the gasket in. So it was recommended not to replace everything. So I was like, well, maybe I should just replace all of these washers here, these thrust plates, because they're cheap. And he said, no, it's better to use what you have because it's already kind of worn in, and you're going to be closer to where you need to be on your gaps. So I am replacing the one that's broken. You'll see in the video, one of these is cracked. And then I'm replacing these, but I will likely have to sand these down to get just the right thickness to make sure everything fits. So that's kind of what's going on with the rear axle and how to put it back together. The drive shaft, I've checked it. The end play is fine. The play on the U-joint is fine. So everything seems to be okay on the drive shaft, which isn't a surprise. I mean, this has already been gone through, so it's likely that they've checked and maybe replaced things in the drive shaft as well. But the drive shaft, to repair it, you have to like drill out some rivets and things, and it's kind of a whole complicated thing that I don't want to get into. I'm not trying to do a full rebuild on this rear end. I really just wanted to open it up, inspect it, and then replace anything that might cause issues down the road, like that cracked washer and this bad bearing. You know, so I'm glad that I'm going to be able to replace those. But then also one of the main reasons for doing this was to replace the brakes. So I have these brake shoes, which actually have like brake material on them. The original brake shoes were just metal on metal, so they only worked as a parking brake. These shoes will actually work in a bind. If you need to, you can use these to actually stop the car. You can see, here's the drum, and I've taken these off and painted these. They used to be red. But so now this will actually work as an actual brake. So if I need it to stop the car, I can use it for that purpose. So that's kind of the main thing, was just replacing the brakes and then taking a quick inspection and then replacing whatever needs to be done. I also got this new style seal, which is going to go on the outside of the axle, and that's to help keep the oil from the axle into getting into the brake drum. So I've got some kind of, you know, upgraded parts that will hopefully help keep things working even a little bit better than they did originally. And then, yeah, you can see I've started painting stuff, so it's getting close. I'll be putting it back together soon. So I am pretty confident that I'll have the rear end back in the car and have it moving again in time for next Wednesday's video, or this coming Wednesday's video. Also, I mentioned before the issue with the generator. So you may remember, let's see if it's open. So before I mentioned that I tried to adjust the generator to get the correct amperage to charge the battery, and it stopped working. And it's almost certainly this gasket in here. So the piece that you can move around to adjust is a gasket underneath of it to prevent it from making contact with this other point of the generator, and that's really in bad shape and worn out. So it's almost certainly that's the problem. And also I mentioned there was a wire in there that could have been an issue. Well, there's only one wire apparently, and that's this wire. So I got this as a replacement. I also got a new insulator for the main bolt on the generator, but then I got this piece here, and this is a rebuilt plate for the generator. So the way that it works, you can loosen this nut and then you can slide this back and forth, and that's how you can adjust the amount of amperage you're getting on the charge. And this, see, now they've used like some kind of plastic or something for this insulator, but this insulator used to just be kind of a gasket type material, and that's deteriorated, and so most likely I'm getting a contact there on the generator. So anyway, this should fix it, I believe, probably no problem, and I think it's going to be a pretty easy fix. And this was only like 60 bucks, so that's all good. I can't really put it in and try it out until I get the rear end in the car, because I don't want to run the engine without the drive shaft connected. I think I might make a mess. There might be oil coming out of there. And also the car's on jack stands, and I don't want to risk having it vibrating around and then maybe falling off the jack stands. So I can't really get to that until the rear end's in the car. But like I said, that's all looking pretty good, and it should be back in the car very soon. So once, aside from what you see here and putting the rear end back together, I also still need to go under the car and clean that up, and I'm going to paint the frame and all that stuff. So I've got more work to do on that. You can see that I'm kind of test fitting this rim. This is the spare rim, so I still need to mount the spare tire on the rim. I've also been installing turn signals and brake lights. I want to make it a little bit safer, because I do actually want to drive it around a bit. So I'm in the process of doing that as well. I'll show you the turn signals real quick, because you have to kind of decide on the front where you're going to put them. But overall I think they look okay. This is them. They don't stand out too bad, and they'll definitely be a good safety feature. So I'm working on that. Let's see. I think that's pretty much it. Oh, I did buy one of these knobs, an aftermarket one, but it didn't fit either. People have been telling me you can get it from different places, and I bought the one that they had. I don't have it in the car right now. It looked the same as this, but the threads went out the same. So I am still looking for this piece if someone has it. And people have said that I could have one made at a machine shop, and I definitely could. In fact, I even have a really small lathe, so I could make one myself. That's not the it wouldn't be the end of the world to have to make one, but I'd rather find an original one if I can. The color will match and it'll be exactly the same. So if I can find one, that's what I want to do. If not, then I'll probably make one eventually. So I think that's pretty much it then for the Model T. Like I said, the next video will be with the rear end in it, and it'll be moving, and that should pretty much be it. So I'm thinking probably the video after that is going to be the first drive video. So that's very exciting. Okay, so thanks for watching, guys. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing. Bye.